glance, this is One Punch Man in middle school. At second glance, it's me in middle school. At third glance, I didn't have powers, friends that fly a shirt or a bowl cut. Well, I had one of those things, I'll let you guess which one. Through all of the visually animated contrast, intense fight scenes, and emotional suspense, there was one thing that I thought Mob Psycho 100 was able to do that took this anime to another level. It is no surprise that Mob Psycho 100 is a parody of the traditional shonen formula. As such, many of the common styles of writing or drawing are imitated with deliberate exaggeration for comedic effect. These range from announcing every single attack to fan service in the depiction of women. Name a common shonen trope, and chances are Mob Psycho 100 has exaggerated or poked fun at it in some way or another. There is no denying the popularity of Shonen Jump, and in turn the effectiveness of these tropes. However, in the process of parodying these tropes while attempting to write a more serious story, I believe the author, 1, has stumbled upon one of the best writing formulas that could only work under these certain conditions. It has become quite popular in anime in recent years for the main character to begin their journey as the most powerful or talented character in the story. This allows for the direction and theme of the story to be unique in ways that the classic take on action-adventure anime would not be able to pull off. Additionally, making the show a parody in one way or another further adds to the opportunities that are not possible in traditional story formulas. It is fair to say that when watching a show, the main character will always win because otherwise the show would not be able to continue on. When watching most fights, the outcome is almost completely known despite the show trying to increase the suspense and make us think otherwise. Unless the show is Dragon Ball Z, where you can actually kill off the main character because they will come back somehow sometime. When the main character of the show is determined right off the bat to be the strongest, we remove the suspense of whether the main character will win and look at what else the show is trying to convey. I feel, most often than not, these shows will use this as a way to express comedic aspects with cool fight scenes where it is acceptable to be lighthearted because you know with no question who is going to win. This can be seen in anime such as One Punch Man, Eminence in a Shadow, or Devil is Part-Timer. Then you also have shows that use characters' overpowered abilities to portray the character as being cool, someone that you want to be. They are the Nick Dean from Jimmy Neutron. The conflicts in these shows would be more political, or an overarching plot that the characters are focused on while the conflicts or fights are displayed for the purpose of adding entertainment or further respect to the main character. This can be seen in shows like Reincarnated Assassin or Classroom of the Elite. Now, Mob Psycho 100 also has the most overpowered main character. We know he has almost limitless powers and no one can beat him. He is the known factor in the equation to form the plot. However, the story is not purely a comedic satire despite there being funny scenes and lighthearted connections between characters. Mob is also not made out to be the coolest character. The way Mob is drawn can attest to that. His brother looks better than him and is more popular. Mob is awkward and has trouble fitting in. He is a character that the audience can mostly relate to despite his overwhelming abilities. But the show doesn't focus on those abilities or growth of his power and psychic strength. Instead, the focus is more on the things the audience can relate to, such as trying to join a club where he can fit in, achieving his goals, talking to girls, and making friends. This theme is not on the side or in the background behind the main story of the show. It is the main story of the show. In all areas where the audience watching Mob Psycho 100 are spoiled with amazing animation of cool fight scenes and powerful character abilities, the outcome is never determined by who is stronger. We know who is stronger. The main conflict that causes the suspense and investment into the characters is Mob's ability to remain selfless. Mob cares about others and never truly wants to hurt anyone. He follows Reagan's teachings because he truly believes that is how he should live and to be a normal person, not an overpowered Esper. We do not watch these fights to see who will win in a battle of psychic abilities. We watch to see in what ways Mob can overcome the obstacles that are in his way to help others and to grow both mentally, physically, and emotionally. There is plenty of discussion about Mob Psycho 100's ability to truly display the challenges of mental health and emotional stability. But what I want to shed some light on is the way the story's writing allows for a different and fresh angle of conflict and resolution that is not often seen in action-adventure anime and manga. Even at the greatest heights of Mob Psycho 100, the fight scenes are background noise, the abstract paintings on the wall, the cool breeze on a summer day. I don't know where I'm going with this. Every fighting scene and heavy action-filled sequential animation is nothing more than the falling action resulting from the climax of the conflict. These fights are not the answer to the conflict, but an obstacle Mob has no problem overcoming due to his power. The intensity of these scenes are not if Mob is stronger, but if he is able to persevere through them until he can achieve the resolution he desires. This process taken to resolve the conflict is part of that special formula found in the show. Conflict is the most defining factor of storytelling that allows for the depth and heights of a story to be engaging and memorable to the audience. There can be both internal and external conflict, and as you see throughout the show, Mob faces both of them on almost a daily basis. Our curiosity builds as two forces oppose one another, and this leads to an entertaining climax where the story reaches the point of greatest tension between the two forces. Now, what is being described is simply the formula for the plot of any show. The way Mob Psycho 100 is able to provide a viewing experience as a psychic power action show with beautifully animated action scenes while not actually using the outcome of the fights to resolve the main conflict points is so well done that most people would not even recognize or realize why the emotional impact is as strong as it is. Most, if not all the conflict scenes in Mob Psycho 100 are resolved not through Mob using his overwhelming power to get what he wants, but through his ability to truly care, sympathize, and connect to people who need it most. I am not saying that Mob Psycho does not use violence, but the fighting scenes during the falling action are not the cause of the resolution. They are simply an obstacle that Mob needs to persevere through. More often than not, characters will resort to violence when they are not understood or in need of something they don't have any other way to achieve. Mob, who grew up afraid of his powers, wanting to be normal, not want to use his powers to fit in, works as hard as he can to achieve his goals without violence. Mob knows and understands that it's difficult and how it is easy to turn to being aggressive and violent. He uses his understanding of hardships and difficulty to empathize with others and connect with them in order to show them a brighter future, give them a second chance, resolves conflicts with and within others by selflessly helping them. Now, there are many different ways to resolve conflicts. Generally, there are 5 different conflict resolution styles. Accommodating style. There is an element of self-sacrifice when accommodating to satisfy the other person. While it may seem generous, it could take advantage of the weak and cause resentment. Accommodating style would be used when you do not care that much about the outcome, but want to preserve or build the relationship. This resentment often leads to further complications. Avoiding style. Those who avoid conflict tend to be unassertive and uncooperative while diplomatically sidestepping an issue or simply withdrawing from a threatening situation. Peaceful times in action-adventure stories often are due to both sides avoiding conflict. Most times, this is how stories will start until there is that inciting incident that causes a conflict that can't be avoided. These two styles don't really resolve the conflict as much as it is stuffing it all into your closet to come exploding out the next time you open it. A common way to resolve conflict is by competing against your opponent to get what you want. Competing style is for those who are assertive and uncooperative and willing to pursue one's own concerns at another's expense. This style is often destroys the relationship in the process of obtaining the desired outcome, which usually is not a problem in stories where the two sides have no chance of forming a friendly relationship. Another reason this conflict resolution style is common among action-adventure stories is that neither party is able to understand what the other party is actually fighting for. When it is unknown what the reason for the conflict is, the outcome becomes the only thing that is focused on. These outcomes conflicting within the two parties that either are not willing or not given the chance to understand the other party causes competing style the only viable conflict resolution. However, with Mob's overwhelming psychic powers combined with his selfless and empathetic nature, he is able to seek out a connection with the opposing force and attempt conflict resolution that does not come at anyone's expense. These can be compromising style, which aims to find an expedient, mutually acceptable solution that partially satisfies both parties in the conflict while maintaining some assertiveness and cooperativeness. Better yet, collaborating style is a combination of being assertive and cooperative. Those who collaborate attempt to work with others to identify a solution that fully satisfies everyone's concerns. In this style, both sides can get what they want and negative feelings are minimized. Every character in the show has their way of handling things and are very unique in terms of problem solving. This variety of personalities allows Mob to take influence and experience in the many different personalities and feelings of others. He is able to experience the different methods of problem solving and conflict resolutions. Understanding these beliefs and feelings of everyone he meets allows Mob to further grow as both a middle school kid and a hero who can use his powers to actually help the people who need it most. In most action-adventure stories, there is usually little other forms of conflict resolution that are possible when facing enemies that are strong and powerful. This then leads to little choice but to fight and resolve the conflict through competing to obtain what one side wants. Thanks to the stage being set early on that Mob is, at least to the viewer, the strongest character in the show, we are able to see Mob attempt to resolve the conflict that would not even be possible in other anime, shows, or movies. It is this parody aspect of the show that allows for a deeper and more meaningful story. The writer of Mob Psycho 100 knows well how to write characters that are overpowered and still provide entertaining action and visual sequences even when the action is solved in one punch. But with Mob Psycho 100, he uses the overpowered main character as a way to allow a deeper and more meaningful growth of the characters and the connections between them. Although it might seem to his enemies like Mob has everything they could ever want, in reality, he is struggling like everyone else, if not more so. He uses these struggles and difficulty he faces in life as a way to empathize with others who face similar struggles. Thus, solving conflicts he faces through this connection, he attempts a resolution style that emphasizes the relationship without any expenses on either side. Mob wants what is best for everyone, including others that are causing a conflict for concern. Mob attempts to solve all his conflicts without the competing style that is so common throughout action-adventure anime. Now I know what you're thinking. Show me the Carfax? Well, now that we know about structure of storytelling and the methods of conflict resolution, let's look at the conflicts and falling actions within Mob Psycho 100 to see how Mob is able to do what barely any other stories are able to achieve. Hanazawa has believed his entire life that his powers has made him the chosen one. Not many characters in the story even have powers, and even of the ones that do, it is no doubt that Hanazawa contains very strong powers with impressive control over them. It becomes clear that the reason Hanazawa continues to fight Mob when they first met, despite how intense the fight got, was because he was afraid to accept that in reality he is not the strongest, that the world doesn't revolve around him. It seems very self-centered, but it is scary when everything you've ever known is at risk of being wrong. Mob attempts to get him to stop by asking multiple times, and insisting that it's not good to use your powers to harm others. Mob continues to only defend himself during his consistent attempts at resolving the conflict peacefully through his words and sharing his own ideals with Hanazawa. But because of Hanazawa's past experiences and his fear of reality being wrong, the only way for Hanazawa to be satisfied is to witness Mob going all out and proving to himself that he is stronger. However, if that is the case, Mob wouldn't be able to prove to Hanazawa that there is more to life than using your powers to get what you want. The conflict between the two sides is Hanazawa wanting to prove that he is special because of his powers, and Mob wanting to prove that you don't need powers to be special. Ultimately, the conflict was resolved through Mob's display of a peaceful use of powers to Hanazawa. After Mob lost control and displayed a massive amount of power, he did not cause harm to Hanazawa, it was just a display. The scene in the anime is displayed in a way of surreality as Hanazawa realized that even with the powers he has, they don't make him any more special than others, and he's just an average person. Mob could easily have won that fight, but chose instead to connect and get through to Hanazawa. Thus, a connection was made between them, and ultimately they became friends, where the newfound respect Hanazawa has for Mob allows him to see and understand the ideals that Mob tries to follow. Mob did not simply crush Hanazawa to prove himself more superior and walk away, because Mob cares for others and wants the best for them. Mob is able to resolve this conflict without any expense on either side, while Hanazawa was forced to come to the realization that he is not special just for the sake of having powers. He was able to grow from the fight and allow Mob to show him a new, healthier, and more beneficial way of life. Speaking of Serizawa, we were speaking of him, right? Okay, well, the conflict resolution between Mob and Serizawa displayed the heights of Mob's ability to empathize with his opponents. The entire conflict was due to Serizawa being ordered by Toichiro to defeat Mob and prevent him from meddling with his plans. Mob realizes Serizawa is being used and understands what is keeping Serizawa trapped. Mob's life could easily have gotten to the point to end up controlled by others. They both had problems using their powers and ended up having to push people away due to their powers. Mob was fortunate enough to have Reagan to help him, whereas Serizawa found help from Toichiro. Thanks to Mob's understanding and empathy, Mob is able to get through to Serizawa by sharing his memories and feelings of true friends, thus allowing Serizawa to come to his own realization that Toichiro has not given him that. The support and empathy that Mob provides is able to form that connection with Serizawa, showing him that there is hope, that friendship is possible even despite the powers he has, powers that Mob has struggled with in similar ways. This connection not only resolved the conflict that was presented with Mob, it was able to form a bond with Serizawa and provide him with a brighter future. Mob never intends to compete with Serizawa, to overpower him as if nothing more than an obstacle. Mob does not want to resolve this conflict at the expense of someone else in front of him. Mob is able to relate to Serizawa and immediately understand the reasons behind his actions. Due to Mob being able to relate, Mob is able to provide the empathy and kindness to resolve the conflict in a way that helps both of them. Mob needed to move on to stop Toichiro, and Serizawa needed to help someone that he thought was a friend. The compromise here is that Serizawa needed a true friend, and Mob could be that friend. Mob can show him what true friendship is actually like, and Serizawa can take him up on that opportunity and support Mob with his goal instead of serving as his obstacle. Conflict resolved. No competing to the brink of death necessary. Yet the conflict between the two was still suspenseful and entertaining to the viewer. Now, just because Mob is able to and intends to resolve conflict through connection and avoid the competing resolution style, this doesn't mean that fighting to the brink of death doesn't occur. Thanks to the author's amazing writing style, he is able to provide us with both an entertaining high-stakes fighting scenes with intense action, while the ultimate resolution coming from Mob's connection and empathy, not him crushing his opponents. Thus, Mob continues to avoid the competing conflict resolution style at all costs. This is shown extremely well when Mob has to fight Toichiro. The power that Mob uses to fight his opponents isn't used to defeat them or to win at another's expense, but he uses his power as a tool for helping them. Mob wants to show them a new, brighter path. In the fight Mob has with Toichiro, Mob intends to help Toichiro. He tries not to lose hope in the fact that he can convince him to turn a new leaf. But at the very end, Mob finally sees that there is no other choice but to use the competing style to resolve the conflict. A style that Mob could have used at any time, knowing his power far surpasses just about anyone. Okay, so my argument becomes invalid because Mob actually tries to defeat his opponent. Or is it? Mob's intentions to defeat his opponent allow him to use more power than he was using while trying to convince Toichiro to change his ways. This leads to Toichiro to be forced to use 100% of the power he has stored up, resulting in his body to explode due to being incapable of using this much power. Even during such difficult times, when hope has already been lost, Mob is able to stay true to himself. He is able to stay in control of the entire fight, and when Mob witnesses the power about to explode out of Toichiro, he knows he has to tell his friends to get to safety. But not only does he help his friends, up until the very last moment, when it is clear that Mob has won the fight, Mob approaches Toichiro to help him. He is able to help absorb some of the power that is about to explode, and in the process, form a connection with Toichiro. In a battle where it seems connection was futile, where Mob had even given up hope, Mob is able to overcome this obstacle. He is able to resolve the conflict through connection out of his empathy and kindness. Mob is able to achieve his goals not through Toichiro's loss, but through this new opportunity given to him. Not only are the connections made between Mob and his opponents used to help resolve the conflict and set them on a brighter path, Mob Psycho 100 follows through with these connections and allows for the growth to be revisited. From Dimple to Hanazawa to Serizawa to even Toichiro, they all remember the help and support that Mob has shown them. This translates from anything to becoming Mob's friend to helping him in times of need, all while giving him the natural respect that is important in relationships. Mob is able to turn even the most difficult opponents to friends in a process that only he is capable of. The overwhelming power that Mob contains within him, the power that Mob has struggled his entire life to control, is able to be used to help and support people in a way that would not be possible without it. He is able to use this power not to defeat his opponents, but to persevere through the difficulty that there is to connect with them. If you decide one day to rewatch Mob Psycho or read the manga, you will find that every conflict that Mob faces is resolved through some neutrally beneficial way. Mob is selfless and cares about the people around him. He has contained his overwhelming power at all times in order to prevent any harm to others. These are ideals he stays true to no matter what the obstacle is presented in front of him. Thanks to this constant factor of Mob being the strongest, we may be entertained with the fighting and action scenes, but we are sitting on the edge of our seats for how Mob will be able to form that deep connection until the very end.